All right, everybody, let's kick this off. Go ahead, grab a seat. Yeah. Really? All right. Happy Thursday. I'm not asking advance, so let's see if we got anything good. Micah, you got anything good you want to share? I think you might be the. Yeah. Actually, give us a lender update. Give us a lender update.
Yes, speaker. Lender update.
Steve, you got the lender update? Pardon me? You got the lender update?
No.
Let's let Micah give the lender update.
Okay.
All right, Micah, what you got?
Some good inflation data is coming out, so keep your eyes out for the next coming month or so. Rates saw a little bit of relief this week. So all eyes on May. There's going to be some lagging indicators that are going to come into play. So fingers crossed that we see some more relief in May. So something to look forward to. Other than that, if you guys have any repairs that are holding up closing, we do escrow holdbacks as a company. So if you want to know more about that, you can talk to me.
Awesome. How do they talk to you?
Yeah, numbers 916-539-1772.
What do you want to know, Ohio?
Micah, here, let's do this again. Micah, 916-539-1772. 1772. And New Way, right?
New American.
New American, sorry. All I know is that they make good cookies, guys. They're the cookie guys. All right, thank you so much for that. Now now we've all had 30 seconds to think. Tell me something good. Jen, you got anything you want to share? Tell me something good. Yeah.
We have a new listing coming up.
What
It should be live today. It's a double duplex that I tried to get your wife to show off market, but she didn't follow through.
Oh no.
Sorry. Party poopers. So that'll be on, it should be on the MLS today. It's on 48, but it's a double duplex. So it's 2-bedroom, 1 bath. All of them have been renovated and they each have their own yards and they each have a 1-car garage.
1-car garage. And how'd you get that lead?
That would be my buyer's agent who got it from a bar that she works at.
A bar, there you go. So you can network in.
Bar, I'm not joking.
You can network anywhere. Also, you got an event coming up, right?
Oh yeah, you want me to share that now, or you want to?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so we have our 4th annual Top Women in Real Estate coming up.
Yeah, round of applause. That is a round of applause.
I was just telling Lexi, this started as my baby. I wake up at like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. with like these ideas, and that's what started this. So it's me, Cindy Silva, Darcy Stratton, and Marguerite Crispillo that put it on every year. You're going to want to get tickets because we do sell out every year. There's a QR code and you can, on any of our Facebooks, it's going to be all over the place for the next month until we have it. And then side note, if you or anybody you know wants to help sponsor the event, we are still looking for sponsors. You can contact me at 916-532-5896 and I can give you sponsor info, but we're still looking for different sponsors for the event. This year we're switching it up a little bit. Last couple times we did lunch. This time we're going to do a mimosa bar and breakfast. Oh, I'm sorry, and coffee by Yard Dog Coffee House.
There you go.
And is it Rosie Rodriguez?
Can dudes come?
It is Rosie Rodriguez for sure. So if you guys don't know Rosie, she is.
I will be there.
She's and yes, men are allowed to come too. Barry's not in here, but Barry was the first person I invited this time because he was hurt because he wasn't invited. So I made sure to invite him first.
Awesome.
But men obviously can come too. Rosie Rodriguez will be there. She's has been in the lending and real estate for
You're looking at me like I have no idea.
a really long time. She's an amazing speaker. She's an author. She is powerhouse, like such a positive human being. You do not want to miss her.
Nope. So that's happening May 10th. May 10th at PCAR. And by the way, that pretty girl over there will also be speaking. Raise your hand, pretty girl. She'll be on the panel. Yeah. Not you, Michael. Not you. You must have been drinking Bud Light beer this morning. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. Yes. New moms. All right. And so other events coming up, Build 23. If you don't have your tickets now, get it. Come on, people. This is going to be an incredible event. Just go to buildevent23.com, book your tickets today. And then we also have coming up, so we will not be meeting here this or next Thursday. We will be meeting at PCAR, which is the same location that the top women in real estate event is going to be taking place at Placer County Association of Realtors. We are flying down Kim Frazier and her husband. These are top producing agents out of, we need that reaction on camera, Lexi.
I know.
Who are we flying down? Who are we flying down? Yay! Yeah, there we go. So they're absolutely incredible people, and you're gonna want to be there. That's happening not this Thursday, obviously, but next Thursday for free at PCAR, 10 to noon. So make sure you get your tickets. You can just go to brentgove.com and register there. So that way we have an idea of how many people to plan on.
For those of us who don't know Kim Frazier, like Lexi obviously does, can you give us a 10-second bio on her?
She sells a lot of homes and she's really successful. So I did it in 2 seconds. Yeah.
This would be the best talking point. She's the iconic realtor in her entire city. She recruited the mayor of her city into EXP. So the mayor of the city is an EXP realtor and speaks at all of her stuff. We flew out there and they had 500 people at this crazy event. It was awesome.
Wow.
She's in cool.
Washington. And so,
The realtor, the city basically.
and so what's really cool about her and why Brent thought of her is when they did their West Coast tour a couple of years back, remember during COVID, like they had all these different cities. Hers was the best one. Like her speaking, her audience, just what she brought to the table was absolutely incredible. So we wanted to bring it to us here in Roseville.
We'll just say this, they do luncheon letters, like they all do. They have 80 to 100 people at theirs. Not easy to get that many people to lunch.
So it speaks a lot to her ability, not only as a
If you were to keep one realtor, maybe it would help.
realtor.
Yeah.
That's going pretty well.
He does okay.
And so, and then of course, this is going on, guys. We only have a couple weeks left. If you want to donate, please go to expLLS.com, make a donation, $5, $10. Every donation helps. Like these are local people. These are local people that this society has helped. And like Nicole, I met Nicole. She's cancer free because of treatments provided by LLS. So please just hop on here, go to expLLS.com, One more time, expLLS.com and make a donation. And then with that,
And then the record on the screen.
I was going to promote that when we get a little closer. We're evented out. So we do have an event for those of you who are interested. We have an event coming up at Moonraker. It's going to be on April 29th from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. There'll be a food truck. There'll be a band. It'll be a good time. And all proceeds go towards
But is there for free?
expLS.com. There's a what?
I said, but is there a free beer bar?
Free beer bar. Yeah, if you buy a ticket, you get one free beer. There you go. Hey! So, and it goes towards a good cause. So drink beer, fight cancer. It doesn't get any better than that. Our speaker for today is Richie. Richie sent me his PowerPoint actually while I've been talking to you. So let me stop the share and I will see if I can bring it up really quick, the more updated version. So just give me 2 seconds. Meanwhile, Richie, mind just standing up, kind of giving us come up to the front, give us a little bio about yourself as I'm pulling this up.
Sure.
All right, welcome to the front of the room, Mr. Richie Johnson.
Hey there, I'm Richie, real estate appraiser. Been doing it since about 2011. When I was getting trained, I got my real estate license. So for the first couple of years, as I was being supervised, I sold some homes and got to feel like, is this pain? So kind of got to see both sides of it. And over the last 5 years or so, I kind of transitioned out of selling because I started a full-time real estate business with a couple of agents in my office. So it kind of gives me a good perspective of the nervousness, I guess. I get a lot of times on the phone. I was, man, these agents are so uptight. And then I started selling and appraisers calling me. I'm going, oh, because there's always something. You never know what you're going to get. So I started in my early 20s and trained a few people. And I do these talks every once in a while just to give some basic information, a lot of things that I've learned over the years and kind of used when I was selling at the beginning part. And now it's just kind of dispelling a lot of just general myths, because I hear things all the time. Agents say, oh, I hear you can't do this, or I don't know if you can do that. And a lot of times they're very experienced agents. I wonder, man, I wonder where they're getting this. And I think it's just a bunch of hearsay. So in the presentation, I have quite a few quotes and from the Fannie Mae Selling Guide or the FHA Handbook. So afterwards, you guys can get it emailed to you if you want to look it up.
All right, we're close, Richie. Thank you for
That's it.
stalling.
You got it. So I have 4 boys, oldest is 6, youngest is 1.
Oh my
and,
goodness.
When I was selling real estate, I was single, and kind of when I started having kids, that's when I like dropped the sales license because, and I would hear kids in the background, and I always think, man, what an unprofessional agent. I would always think that, and then I had kids, and I was like, oh, this is what it's all about. Or that I get a call, I need to reschedule, my kid is sick, and I thought, well, what's this have to do with our appointment? And I had sick kids, and I was like, oh, okay. So, is there a clicker, or do you just hit next?
Yeah, you just tell, oh, there's the fam. There they are.
Poke the clicker on the back of the head.
Okay.
It's like Mad Men saying
So
that.
there it is, next.
Sorry, it got messed up.
Yeah, it looks good on my computer, but on the other people's. So the overview, things I was going to cover really quick is what is market value? What repairs and conditions are, unpermitted area, what counts and doesn't count, how appraisers select comps, and what to give your appraiser. And some of these things are kind of covered and people have general information, but I just like to give some sources so you can go back and reference them. Next. Market value, one of the most common questions I get or statements I get is, well, we have a contract, like this obviously needs to be the appraised value. And the question is why usually, and the definition that Fannie Mae, FHA, and VA all use is Fannie Mae's definition of market value, and I bolded the most important parts, and market value is the most probable price that a property will bring with a buyer acting prudently and knowledgeably. Where I see the biggest disconnect is most probable. Like when you go to your listing appointment, you don't say this thing's worth 500. You kind of say here's a range, like it's somewhere between 490 and say 515, and we'll probably land there. And sometimes you get surprised. You can offer at 525 and you go, wow, I didn't see that coming. And sometimes you don't even really see support for it, but you hand the contract to the appraiser and go, well, 525, that's what the market bears. And that brings us to the next point, is the person acting prudently and knowledgeably. And a lot of times I get from the agents, this person can beat out on 10 other homes, their lease is up, they have to move. And I'm hearing all this, I'm going, this is working against you, because we're trying to say the buyer's acting prudently and knowledgeably, that's why they're offering this price. Or, oh, their grandmother's next home, they have to live here because they're kids. There's like a lot of things that agents are saying, and I want to say, oh, don't tell me this, like this is all working against you. So I think the biggest reason why my values come in low, if they do come in low, is because either the buyer is desperate or the buyer is not. There's some sort of reason why they have to have this house, and that's a lot of times why the value spins. Repairs, who says and why. A lot of times you get conditions or repairs and you can turn away from FHA offers or VA offers because you go, oh, I just don't want to deal with it. Next. And there's kind of 3 layers when it comes to repairs. You have, if it's an FHA or VA, you have the VA and FHA handbooks. And then next you have also Fannie Mae has conditions. And then the last is lenders. They're called overlays. Lenders can have specific requirements. So you kind of have 3 layers that you have to get through. A lot of times people shy away from the FHA deals or VA because they don't want that extra layer. Next. And the handbook, honestly, there's not a lot of extra things you have to worry about in FHA, where agents will say probably won't go FHA or no FHA offers. And I call up and I go, why? Oh, the carpets are filthy and the property's just in rough shape. It's like, well, that's not a problem. Or they go, oh, there's a broken window, or they list very small things and it's not really a major issue. The main differences for FHA and VA is peeling paint inside or outside, bare wood. So if you have like unpainted eaves or anything that's exposed wood or peeling paint, it's kind of silly, but that's the biggest one. And you have to have your utilities on, and everything needs to be working, like the heating and air and dishwasher. All your major systems need to be working, hot water, etc. But honestly, it's not too much more. Next page. This is a section. The next one we'll have, I cited it. You can see it down at the bottom of the HUD handbook page. I'll give you a bigger quote. I bolded a couple sections. The appraiser must limit required repairs necessary to health and safety, continued marketability, and soundness of the property. And then next page. And honestly, it's not that much more than conventional deals. It's just, is this unsafe? And sometimes you get like, oh, you need a handrail here, or like little nitpicky things. But it says in the handbook, we have page 600, and I'll just read the bolded part. Cosmetic repairs, including missing handrails that do not pose a health or safety concern, holes in window screens, cracked window glass, defective interior paint, built after 1978, minor plumbing leaks that do not cause damage, or other inoperable or damaged components that in the appraiser's professional judgment do not pose a health or safety concern, don't need to be fixed. And I was actually surprised by the cracked window, because a lot of times appraisers will call everybody, what do you think about this for FHA? It's like, oh, that needs to be fixed. But FHA actually addresses it. It's like, hey, if it's a petty thing, like just leave it be. Like if it doesn't need to be fixed for safety concerns, leave it. So a handrail, like walking up the stairs, if it's like a railing with rails, that would be a safety concern. But if it's just the handrail on the side, on the wall side is broken off, it's like specifically says you don't need to do it. So if you ever get a repair condition from an appraiser, I would ask them, where does it say that in the handbook? Because a lot of times they're just making things up because they think, oh, you know, it should be because I was told. Next page. And here's some examples of like cracked window glass wouldn't need to be repaired. Next one. And this would need to be repaired because it's like clearly you cut yourself. Next one.
So real quick, before we move on to the next one, like if it's not outlined in the handbook, then it doesn't need to be repaired.
If it's not a safety concern.
Okay.
So it lists, and can we write down questions and then?
You want to do it at the end?
Yeah, if you could just save them, because I just have to power through it pretty quick.
Okay.
So if it's not a safety issue, like the cracked glass, if you can't get cut on it, not a safety issue. But that I would say, okay, it is a safety issue because you can get cut. It's like, okay, you have like some plumbing leak, like it specifically says if it's not causing damage to the property, leave it. Because this, back before I really read all of the standards, that say, oh, it's not working, like we have to fix it. It's FHA to have everything functioning properly. But it specifically says plumbing leaks that do not cause damage to the property. Next one. Under the sink, if you do have something leaking and it's causing like a, you know, pooling, or it's like clearly that would have to be fixed because it's causing damage, ongoing damage to the property. Lenders, they have overlays. So I would say smoke detectors, CO detectors, and water heaters. Those are always issues that can get called out. I would just ask the appraiser ahead of time, hey, what are the standards for the lender? Do we need to have this done before you come out? Some lenders let you do it after the fact. Some lenders don't care. So you just need to ask. And a lot of times appraisers will just mechanically hit subject to straps, smoke detectors, CO detectors, even though the lender doesn't require it, and it will run through and the lender doesn't even know because an appraisal management company is handling it, and you get the $150 reinspection fee when you didn't need it. So I would ask the appraiser ahead of time about those things. What do I need done? And also underwriters can call out miscellaneous things. So just because a FHA appraiser says nothing needs to be done or a conventional deal doesn't need anything, you can have something come back a couple weeks later where an underwriter condition it, and that's just beyond the appraiser's control. The next thing, does it count? Is probably one of the most common questions I get. And when I'm looking at properties, like how do you value something when you have unpermitted space? And then other special features like guest homes, barns, just anything crazy that you go, oh, how do I value this?
It does count or doesn't?
We'll go over it. What doesn't? Like that's the most common question is I have an unpermitted area. Like, how do I handle this? And then that's what this is going to cover. This is a quote from the handbook. So if you ever get an offer, you have a listing and you have an unpermitted space. I personally, if I was listing a home, I would prefer an FHA offer over a conventional offer. And this is why. For FHA, it's from the handbook. I think I have page 593 if you want to read the whole section, but I bolded the most important parts. 3 questions. Is it built in a similar manner to the rest of the home? Is it accessible through the main home? And does it have a heat source? So is it kind of the same as the rest of the house? Can you get to it from the rest of the house? And does it have a heat source? And it says, I bolded, the appraiser must treat the room addition or garage conversions as part of the living area. So it says it right there. A lot of times I get, agents calling saying, I have this appraisal and it says no value because it's unpermitted. And I look at it and I go, send it back to the lender and say, can you look at page 593? And it says you must include this if it meets 1, 2, and 3. Because a lot of times people say, oh, no permit, no value, and that is not correct. Okay, next page. This would be an example of not living area because it's not built like the rest of the home. That's a sunroom, and that would go on a separate line item. That would be an example of something that would be included, even though there's no permit. It looks like the rest of the home. You can get to it through the inside. If it's sufficiently heated, you would value it like living area. This one where it can kind of go both ways. You have a stucco exterior house, but then you have kind of T111 siding with a little bit of a sloped flat roof. Next page. And you look at it and you go, okay, like this is clearly an addition. There's no permit. Like, I don't know. Next page. And you look inside, you go, well, it's accessible through the inside of the house, but you have to go through a bedroom to get to it. And then the roof is kind of sloped, but you do have a heat, mini split. Next page. And you're kind of looking, going, well, it's kind of a bonus room. And this is actually my wife and I, our house from about 10 years ago. We enclosed a patio, and when I listed it, I put it as a larger area. I measured it and said this is the actual size, but I said in the notes, not permitted addition, and I priced it about half the value of that area if it was full living area. Because I go, okay, you have to go through a bedroom to get to it, not quite the same as the rest of the house. Because if you're just valuing it, even though FHA says count it as living area, if you're giving it full credit as living area, it's kind of being a little disingenuous. And it ended up selling for a little bit more than a 2,000 square foot house, but less than a 2,400 square foot house. So it's somewhere kind of in the middle. This is one where it's like it can go either way when you get it. It's like, okay, is that the same quality as the rest of the house? A lot of it or Barrow or Orange Vale, where it's like over the years they kind of put in a laundry room, put on this, put on that, and it can kind of go either way. It depends on how the appraiser sees it. If you as an agent are looking at it, I always recommend agents get their properties measured. I do a lot of measuring for agents where you see 2 different numbers in the county, or you see one number and it says 900 square feet. You go, this is just like, it isn't, like it's bigger, like it feels bigger. It's about $100 to $150 depending on how big the home is, and you get a sketch. And MLS lets you list source per appraiser. And if you have an old home, it's well worth $125 if you're getting another, even if it's only 80 square feet. You go from a 900 square foot to 980, or in the 9s to the 1000s. It's a big difference. If the area doesn't meet one of those 3 standards, it's not accessible to the main home, it's not quite the same quality, or it doesn't have heat, you need to include that area on a separate line. So just saying no value because it doesn't meet those things isn't correct. So when you read your report, it'd usually be at the bottom portion of your appraisal, and it will say room addition, sunroom, some sort of line item. And how you come up with that value is a long question, but usually appraisers put something in there for it. Fannie Mae, they're a little bit more vague, and it's really only one sentence they have, and it says that if you determine that there is no permit, the appraiser must comment on the quality and appearance of the work and its impact, if any, on the market value of the subject property. So it kind of leaves it wide open to where it's like, okay, if it's unpermitted, the appraiser's duty per Fannie Mae is just comment on it and tell us basically what is it worth. So they don't have set defined definitions for it, and it doesn't say you must include it. It just says tell us about it and value it. So it's a little bit more vague, and that's why I say an FHA offer with an unpermitted addition is easier, because if you get some appraiser that just says, this isn't worth it, then they don't know what they're doing. Say, hey, look back at the handbook, go through it, and it kind of gives them some weight to go, oh, okay, I can include this. Additional features, guest homes, probably one of the most common question, like what is my ADU worth, or what is the guest home worth? And for FHA and Fannie Mae, it's never include the 2 together. Sometimes it works when you're comping out a house. If you have a 2,000 square foot and 1,000 square foot, an agent will meet me at a property and give me a bunch of 2,000 square foot homes. Sometimes that works out right, but usually not. In my experience, a guest home brings a higher value when it's split out, depending on your neighborhood, especially the smaller homes in the older parts of town, like Rockland, Roseville, Orangeville, Fair Oaks. If you have an ADU, your value for that 300 square foot studio in the back is going to be worth more than if it was connected to the home. What's a comparable or a comp? There's no rules. I get a lot of comments of, oh, I know you can do this, I know you can't do this, or, you know, just a lot of thinking that there's some sort of box that you have to stay in. And that has come through many, many years of lending requirements. They've had guidelines, and they've had rules in the past, but almost all of them have been done away with because they found appraisers were getting stuck. So a lot of things are guidelines, and guidelines just need to be commented on if you're going to see fixing them. And some of the common guidelines are within 3 months, within 1 mile, plus or minus 20% of living area. And if you're going to exceed those, you just need to have a reason to do it. The general guidelines do exist for a reason. For the most part, if you're in a neighborhood, there's no reason to go more than 1 mile away. You know, if you're in a standard tract development, a mile's pretty far away to go to, unless you have a reason to do it. If it's a custom home, clearly you're going over 1 mile. If you have a guest home, you're going many miles from the same town. If you're on acreage, you know, a large lot within smaller lots, like clearly you go within 1 mile. It's like there isn't a lot over 1 acre with 1 mile. So what are you doing? So the guidelines are kind of just, if you have a tract home and there's multiple, you know, a handful of models, and you have model match sales, that's when the guidelines come into play, where it's like appraisers say, sorry, I can't. When they say they can't, they mean they don't want to, or they shouldn't skip over similar homes within 1 mile to go 1.5 miles just to get the price. Here's an example. I think this is Serrano. You can't really see, like, clearly you'd be going over 1 mile, and you'd probably sometimes be going back several months or even a year. Sometimes if you have a fully custom home, you might go back a full year or even 2 years for quality and look at changing market conditions. Gold River, or you know, you just have the Powell homes, like you just have all the Powell homes. It's kind of a wide 2.5 mile by only 1/2 mile. So sometimes agents give me stuff and it's all within 1 mile, but it's like, hey, we can go 2 miles over here. Like, why not? Same with Sun City, Lincoln, Sun City, Roseville. Just use the whole neighborhood and don't get stuck into a box when you're copying something out. Look at the whole neighborhood. Unique properties, anything like along the river, Carmichael, Fair Oaks. You could even extend this longer or further out, but when it comes to selecting comparables in areas like this, I mean, you could even go a couple miles up past Sunrise or down the river. You're just looking all over the place. But if you're a 0.2 acre, you know, little home, then that size becomes less. You're gonna have to shrink it down unless you're back in the river or something. Comparative selection, the most important part for appraisers and I think agents is defining your neighborhood, and that's just figuring out, okay, what is my neighborhood, and kind of drawing that area and sticking within that area. If you have a standard home, 20% plus or minus is roughly the living area range, but if you don't have sales, you can clearly expand that out. Small lot homes to small lot homes is if you have a patio or courtyard home, or a lot of the new homes now, there is no yard, it's just a strip of a side yard. It might say 0.1 acre, and then you could have a 0.1 acre home just right around the corner, but it has a full yard. If you have a traditional yard, don't be comparing traditional yards to kind of courtyard homes or the 0 lot line homes. Just stick with those. So a lot of times I'll get handed a bunch of like, oh, these are within a 4 mile, same size, same lot size and everything. But when you look at it, you know your buyer's going to go, I need a yard, or this is too small. So stick within the small lot communities, and even go like a mile or 2 away and find a similar no yard property to compare it to, rather than, you know, looking at properties with yards, because sometimes agents get a little, and even appraisers get a little confused with, oh, they're close. Like, why would I go 2 miles away when I have these close ones? Just because they're not similar. This would be, I would consider this a market area, and that's like basically all of West Roseville. And so that would be, if I was searching an area and I wasn't familiar with it, that would be, or if I had a unique property within that area, that would kind of be my greater search radius. And then I would narrow it down to, next page is a neighborhood. And that's more of newer West Roseville, Melrose type only area, the next page. And then I further break it down to independent subdivisions within that neighborhood. So when I'm not familiar with an area, I start wide and then slowly start narrowing it down. And then once you find a specific area, you might find pockets of either higher or lower sales. And it can be very hard in current market conditions because you could have no sales in some of these subdivisions for the last year. And then you go back a year and it's like, well, prices are different. You go back 2 years and they're even more different. You're going, well, what's what? So that's sometimes you want to get help from an agent that really knows the area and they can kind of tell you, oh, these couple streets sell their premium. These ones are not so nice. These are competing neighborhoods, and it's something I learned about 5 years ago when I was doing an appraisal in Highland Reserve. I guess it's west of 65, and I was over here on the west side, and it was a very, very, very nice home, just over the top, palm trees, pool, 0.3 acre lot, just very nice. And I kind of got stuck in the box, in the Highland Reserve box. I was like, well, this is the neighborhood, and these are what we have. And the agent goes, well, how about over here? And she handed me a handful and she goes, they sell for the same price. I said, I don't know. I think the east side is nicer. What do you guys think? East, or do you think it's the same, or do you think the east side is nicer?
I like east.
East side, yeah.
Okay, so did I. And I was like, I'm not going over there. It's a nicer neighborhood. But
Unless my listing was on the west side.
yeah, then you're
putting
putting
them the same.
So I drew these two maps and I put between 2,500 and 3,500 square feet, all homes that sold, and I hit CMA for both sides, and I put the CMA side by side, and it was like within 2%. Like the homes are a little bit bigger on the east side, the lots are a little bit bigger. Like it's a nicer neighborhood. But for an appraisal, I use sales from the east side because I said, okay, this is a very nice home, it's a big lot, and here are the sales, here's the information, they sell within 2 to 3%, and I used them from the east side. So that's a way to kind of get creative when you do provide sales or listings to an appraiser. You have to give some sort of reasoning or information to it. Yeah, they're over the freeway. Yeah, they're a little bit bigger, but they sell for about this price. This is another example where it's like you got custom homes on the east and west, where if you didn't know, you wouldn't know. Next one. Same here. It's just certain neighborhoods, there's pockets, and a lot of times I would just say ask other agents, ask agents that have sold stuff in the area if you can't figure it out, to kind of get a feel and some information. And then that would be part of the information you'd provide your appraiser. I draw it out and say, look back over the years, like these are the most similar neighborhoods. If you're out of these, they sell for way less. And if they need help, say if you need more help, let me know. I get packets from agents all the time, and they're very large, usually like thick. And to be honest with you, I hate to say it, usually they just go in the trash, because the bigger, big packets, like a folder with full contract, sometimes 20 different printouts, like they just hit print, and just tons and tons of information. And in my opinion, I would say less is better. If you're going to do the contract, the things that I would recommend,
why would you take the contract when that person already has the contract?
I get it. I'm just saying, I don't know. I just am going over these things as like things that happen to me. It's like the thicker, the less chance I look at it. The smaller, the more chance I look at it. And if it's more than just hitting print, I think it goes a long way with appraisers, because they know you took the time. So the things I recommend is a short list of sales, the contract, just page 1 highlighted, and a list of upgrades. And then also the maps that I showed. If it's a unique area, do the maps and say, here's some basic information. If you're not fully familiar with this exact area, here are the most competing subdivisions. If you look into it, you'll figure this out. And on your listings, you need to have, I guess you can call it a value add, like something written down about it, not just here are some sales. It's other info that you know about that property. Say, I showed that property, it smelled like dog, it was terrible. Or that property sold for 50,000 less. Turns out there was a whole bunch of repairs that came up. There's nothing in the MLS about repairs, just letting you know that one had issues. So something written down on the piece of paper. Now you could tell them, but I think handwritten things, very short, get read. I mean, I always read something that's handwritten. And you know that when you like send out flyers, if you handwrite something, the chance of someone reading it is much higher than just something in the mail. Next slide. And here are some examples. You can't really read them, but it's like, you know, highlight something like it's on a busy road or in back's a busy road. And I'd say point out the low sales. Appraisers and everyone, we see the high sales, we can make an appraisal work by just searching, you know, price over this and putting those in. I think your guys' job is what the appraiser's job is supposed to be, is find out why those ones that look comparable shouldn't be used. And it can be as simple as just calling the agent and be like, hey, why did this sell 50,000 less? And usually, oh, well, you know, my seller was in contract to buy a house. They were, you know, up on their contingencies, and the buyer last minute, you know, whatever, had a big reduction in price, and we should have kicked them out, but, you know, we just took the lower price because they had to move. Or, you know, someone smoked inside the house and it just reeked, like it showed very nice, but people just wouldn't even walk in the door because it smelled, or just any number of reasons, and write those down. Because the hardest part as an appraiser is the underwriter after the fact kicking back a list of, why didn't you use this? Why didn't you use this? Why didn't you use this? And they'll give you a list of things you have to respond to. So a lot of appraisers don't want to have to respond to things. So they go, well, I'm just putting it in. Even if it is lower, they think, well, it's the same size. It looks good to me. And a lot of people are lazy and they don't want to pick up the phone, or they pick up the phone, the agent doesn't call back and the thing is due, so you just turn it in not knowing.
No, agents always call back.
And just another example, call on the pendings. I think it's a big difference now as of the last like couple of weeks. You have a bunch of offers, call on the pendings and say, I have an appraisal coming up. I'm on such and such street. Can you tell me what your offers are, what your current offers at? Get that info, write it on the paper and say, I talked to the agent. They have 5 offers. They're currently in contract at this. They're scheduled to close in 1 week. So write it down and say you can confirm it and say, here you go. And that can make or break your deal sometimes. Another example, details, I highlighted, it says as is, cash only, and I just highlighted no financed offers. Like when you have that, you can kind of just throw that out as a sale, because if you're limiting a property to cash offers only, that can have a problem. Rebuttal, last thing, I'll make it quick. How many of you guys have had low appraisals? Yeah, and how many of you guys have won in a rebuttal or had the appraiser change the mind? That's pretty good. A lot of times it's no one, and I've actually had a rebuttal and I won, but it was 6 months later. It was with the VA. It went on for 6 months, back and forth. Yeah, the guy used 3 sales, 2 were in Citrus Heights, 1 was in Roseville, and we were in Roseville. And he just said these were the closest. Yeah, anyways. But so it took 6 months, and I was an appraiser, and I think, man, if you're an agent, like you need some tools. So the basic tools, 3 things play within the appraiser's rule, because the quickest thing to respond to a rebuttal for me personally is shorter the better, and it's usually just eliminating, saying they're either further away outside the neighborhood, they're either larger or smaller than everything I used, or they're more dated than everything I used. So if it doesn't fit into what you've selected as the appraiser, saying these are the best and most similar because distance, size, date of sale. If it's outside of any of those boundaries, you just toss it and say it's outside. What I use better, done. So if you play within the rules, if you're within the distance or within the neighborhood, if you're within the living area side and you're within the date of sale, it's not a simple smackdown of, oh, you know, it's this or this. Now you have to think about it, go, well, why isn't that one better? You know, it's just another step they have to take. Here's the neighborhood boundaries. This is page 1 of the report. All reports have to have a north, south, east, west. So you just go to the page 1, find that, figure out where the boundaries are. Next page. Draw the boundaries. This is kind of a small example. Usually it's a much larger. So I would draw the boundaries that the appraiser used in his report and select comes from that range. Next thing is date of sale. And this is page 2 of the report. And it's usually page 2 and page 7. You can look at the date of sale up there. You have February, January, March. Next page. February, January, March. So say we're in April and that's pretty tight. You go, okay, I can only go back to January because it's a pretty tight range. But a lot of times you might have a December or November of the year before, and just keep that in mind. Go, okay, these are the number of months I have to work with. We can go back one if you want. So you have neighborhood, living area, and I highlighted the living area. So this basically had a range of 1,400 to 2,500, and we're a 2,000 square foot home. So you go, okay, I have a pretty low range on the low side, and you stick within that range. And if you're within all of those, that's a pretty good shot of getting something accepted because it fits into what they did. And it's like, well, why didn't you use this one? Then they have to say why they didn't use it rather than just include it. And it makes it easier for them just to put it in because they go, oh, it fits. But if it's outside of what they've already used, they're just gonna say it's outside what I used and kick it to the curb. If you do find yourself using something outside of the neighborhood or bigger or smaller or more dated, put a couple sentences, 1, 2, 3 sentences and say, the reason why this one is comparable, yes, acknowledge it's outside the neighborhood, acknowledge it's dated, or acknowledge that it's bigger or larger. So you kind of preemptively combat that. You say, yes, this one's much larger, but it's on the same size lot. We're on a 0.25 acre lot and it has a pool or it has a known solar system, or just point out the things that make it comparable and kind of give them a reason to put it in. Next. Are we done? We're at 30 minutes.
So you got all the time in the world. This is good stuff.
Are you sure?
100%. Is this good? You guys enjoying this?
I mean, almost done. Basic GLA adjustment or basic adjustments, and these are agents ask all the time, and even new appraisers ask, and like people on online forums, like, where's the adjustment book? And it's kind of funny because it's like, I wish there was one, because if it was that simple as just like, you know, look it up and go, I have this and plug in this, I have this and plug in this. And many people think it's just a formula to come up with a value. And it's, I mean, that's kind of what Zillow and a lot of the models are doing, is just a formula, which works okay. And it can work very well in a homogeneous neighborhood where you only have a couple models and the homes are pretty standard. But as soon as you get a little bit more unique, it's hard. GLA adjustments, take the average price per square foot. And it's the only time I ever say price per square foot is when you're looking at the average for that size home in that neighborhood. And you say the price per square foot is between 285 and 315. So call it an average of 300. If you have a difference in square footage, about 1/3 of the price per square foot for those size homes. So if you're in the Highland Reserve area and you go, okay, price per square foot is 300, and you have a 3,000 and a 3,300, you got a 300 square foot difference at $100 a square foot, which is about 1/3. If it's on a bigger lot, if it's on acreage, that is a lot lower, like maybe 20 or 15% of the average price per square foot. Because if you're on acreage, you might be at $500, $600, $700 a square foot because all the value's in the land, not the structure. So if you just add 200 square feet, you're not adding, you know, $100,000 in value for that 200 square feet. And the reverse with condos and Sun City, I found it's closer to a half, 50% of price per square foot, and even more when you're jumping up between models. And I think that's a quality change. But if you're in a condo, all you have is your square footage. So almost all the value is in your square footage. So the difference between the 900 and 1,100 could be close to price per square foot, but probably around half. You know, it just depends. I think that's our last slide. That's it. And I shortened it down because I was told a half hour. Usually I go for a whole hour, but.
Oh, that's good stuff. So can we ask questions?
Please do. And sorry for stopping people that have questions. It's just, as soon as I start answering them, sometimes it's answered on the next slide and then I get jammed up.
All good. All good. Go ahead, please.
So you were talking about like their way that the buyer makes an offer, right? Like you don't want to know if they're being desperate or whatever. So what is that? Does that play in at all with multiple offers? Like if a listing agent tells you, hey, we had 8 offers on this property, then in your mind, would you think, well, the highest bidder, the one that they took, they were probably desperate and like overbid just because they wanted to win this bidding war?
So what I suggest and what I would do if I was a listing agent, if I had 8 offers and say the range, it was listed at 500 and your offers were at 500, 500, 505, 510, 510, 550, 545. I'd probably disclose it and say I had a couple at list, I had 2 that were over list, and I wouldn't say they're at 505 and 510. I would word it in a way that makes it sound as, you know, don't lie, but tell them I had 2 at, 2 over, and my 2 highest were 545 and 550. We took it 550. So then they, at least they know there was two at the higher range. Where it gets tricky, it's like, well, if you had 500, 495, 480, 505, 510, and you have one at 575, and you give them the 575, and you say we had it, then that's when I would say we had 8 offers. And then let them guess. And then when they ask me, like, you can tell your client to say, tell me to keep this confidential. And then when the appraiser asks you, sorry, my client wants me to keep this confidential.
Okay.
My listing agreement says everything's confidential anyways, automatically right off the bat.
But I usually ask if
Sometimes
I'm
it's
doing
all
it.
information.
Yeah, I ask.
Okay.
And almost always, if an agent had a couple clustered at the higher end, they tell me, oh, we had one at 547, one at 545, and one at 550. We took the 550.
Yeah.
But when they go, yeah, they were over. It's like, well, what were they? Oh, I don't know. I need to check my file. It's like, then I know what's up. It's like, this is probably an outlier.
Okay.
And that's kind of something I take into consideration, but that's, appraiser specific how they handle it.
Do you have any kind of adjustment for interest rate? We're kind of in this transition right now where, I'll make an offer on a home and they'll say, oh, it's worth more. Look at this. And I say, well, that was last year when rates were 3%. Now they're 6%. I don't think it's worth that. And I don't have comps to support it, but I'm looking at the overall property. I'm saying it's just not worth it right now. So do you ever factor that in, or you just look at what's being sold? And
I think that comes into play under the market condition section of report for each property. If there are no sales in the neighborhood, I'll use the trends graphics, and I'll look at the zip code, I'll look at the county, look at the number of listings, look at the inventory, a combination of everything. And it's easier if it's kind of a tract home. If there's nothing's been sold in that neighborhood, I can go, well, the zip codes pretty much covers this whole area, and homes between 1,500 and 2,000 square foot have done this over the last year. Like, even though you don't have sales, you have zip code data, and you have the county data, and you have the general inventory, and that plays into it. But the specific interest rate as of today is reflected in the current inventory level. And
so there's no plug-in place that you put that
No.
factor it in.
Hey,
But-
Chris, I would also say that it kind of was an investor mindset of the way that you're looking at that price.
Right.
Right, most, your standard buyers aren't gonna look at, okay, affordability rate versus this year versus last year, if it's can afford it or not, right? But as investors, of course, we're looking at it as we have a certain amount of capital that we can plug in, right? And if we wait for the deal, we get more properties, so we're gonna put that in that.
And it also worked in reverse, because if you look at the trends for 2022, you had 5.5% interest rates, and that's when the peak prices were. When the interest rates were the highest, the prices were highest spring, summer of 2022, and that's when rates were almost the highest. So it doesn't really always reflect rates versus prices. And that's another thing you need to take into consideration. You should be deducting closing costs, credits, rate buy downs. When you see small amounts, not that big of a deal, but if you see 20, 30, sometimes you see 40 or 50,000 in concessions, you got to deduct that from the sales price. So if it's sold, yeah, look at this one, it sold at 800. It's like, yeah, but the seller kicked back 35,000. Didn't sell at 800. Sorry.
Like the permits and the appraiser, like if they know that it doesn't have permits, then they have all these things that they have to do to determine value. Do they actually pull permits before going to a property, or
Some do, some don't. This is a little nugget. Just because something says in realist or the county assessor says a square footage, that is not the permitted square footage. That is just what the county assessor knows is there. And that's why the county's sometimes wrong, sometimes right. Or sometimes the county can say it's much bigger, it is much bigger, but it wasn't permitted. The county just knows it's bigger, so they've included it. But most appraisers don't search for permits, and the only time you would is if it really looked janky, or if someone says it is permitted, but it doesn't look like it is, then I would look it up. But I usually make assumptions, most appraisers make assumptions based on what it looks like, and they usually just go off county, even though that's not right.
So what if it's a unpermitted addition, but it's not something where you're going through another bedroom, something where like they just extend a living room or whatever, but it's done in a professional manner. You can't even tell that it's an addition, but they disclose in the MLS, this addition was non-permitted. How would you count that price wise? Because that doesn't seem like you would cut the price in half, because it's not like a funky addition per se.
Right,
It's just not
if it's just expanded and you can't even tell, the value is probably going to be full value, unless it becomes a huge portion of the house. If it was 1,000 square feet and they added 500, now it's like, it's a big chunk of the house. Or if you're in the higher end markets, you're over $1 million and your buyer finds out that even though it looks perfect, they go, come on, like this needs to be permitted. I'm not paying full value. Because that happens a lot with custom homes where they're high end, like $1.5 million homes, and they have an extra 1,500 square feet. It's like, well, they built, when they built it, they called it storage and then they finished it and it's full living area, but it's not permitted as living area. And that becomes a lot more tricky because a typical buyer is like, at that price point, it's like, nah, I'm not paying for the value. It's not permitted, even though it looks perfect and it was done by the builder.
So along with Jen's question, that begs the question, how much value does permitted versus not permitted have? It seems, in my experience, that it's a very subjective value.
Depends on what the market says, and that's your neighborhood. If you're in older neighborhoods, if you're in North Highlands, or if you're in Orangevale or Fair Oaks, like some of the sub $500 range, 500,000, usually you get pretty close to full. If it looks and acts like living area, you get full value. The higher the price point, usually it's the more discerning buyers, and the higher end homes, they think potential problems of, oh, I really want this to be permitted, and then you start to get some discount.
It seems to be the same with ADUs. You made a great distinction that the ADU can't be with the GLA. That's very separate. And it seems, again, very subjective because some buyers, an ADU is way more valuable because that's income, they can offset, they buy it, versus others, like I have a huge family house with an ADU, I just need more GLA. So how do you made a distinction, so I'm curious, how do you value that? Is it GLA have more value, or do you have?
How do I look at, depending on where it is, I think it's even money in, like, say Granite Bay or Loomis, or where you have like really high-end homes and they have the attached, like you have an overhang and then you have the guest home. That is roughly even. But if you get into the rental type properties, it goes way up because the potential rent. And how do I value that? I click on guest home, 2 homes on 1 lot, or additional features. There's like 3 different options in the MLS, and I look for those homes, and those usually stick out as sore thumbs being higher values. And I end up a lot of times with them in my comps. And as I'm going through to do an appraisal, I go, shoot, like this one has a guest home. And I picked it maybe because it's like one of the higher sales, and I had to toss it out because it just doesn't work. But how do you come up with that value? You look at homes that have ADUs and you see what do those sell for compared to homes that don't have them. And usually you can tell that they stick out being higher, like quite a bit higher than that.
They wouldn't necessarily fall into the category of 2 homes on 1 lot, right? An ADU is not affected well.
Right, that's why I check all the boxes and see what comes up, because there's no standardized reporting as far as agents go. Sometimes they put 2 homes on 1 lot, sometimes they put guest house, sometimes they don't even list it. It just goes in as, you can search agent confidential remarks or agent remarks and type in guest, or type in guest, gets you a lot of guest bath or guest bedroom, but they're hidden a lot of times. Because how do you value them? You have to find all the ones first that sold, and then you have to look at those and compare them to other ones in the neighborhood, say how much more did those sell for,
and determine why.
But the biggest value is any old Roseville, old Rockland, Fair Oaks, Orange, like the older areas and smaller homes with another one, because then it becomes a potential like investor property, because the income potential is 30%, 40% higher with that second unit. The value isn't always 40% higher, but it could be 25% higher, 30% higher.
What if you have an appraiser that calls something out wrong? Like, for example, I just had one where an FHA appraiser was like, you need to paint that chip paint. It was not chip paint. It was rusted metal flashing that had never been painted.
There you go.
And I was like, and he also said there was no carbon monoxide. Literally, as soon as you walk in the house, my husband went there with me. I go, babe, walk in here. Just tell me what the first thing is. It's literally eye level.
There it is.
There, I was like, dude, seriously?
This is what I would suggest. First, I would call your lender and say, this is the issue. Do you have an appraisal desk or a management company, and have the lender get in contact with a rep, and then that rep should look at it and then they should help you. If you don't get that, I would say call me. I'll leave my card, and usually depending on what lender it is, I can direct you to like a processor or someone from that company that would handle it. And your biggest help for any issues or rebuttals is get an advocate on the lender side or the AMC side. A lot of the national companies are just dead in the water. 'Cause
My biggest thing was, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was like $500 paint, a stupid flashing, but it's not chip paint, just saying.
Yeah.
But I didn't want the buyer, I represent the seller, I didn't want the buyer to have to pay a trip fee for an appraiser who, I was like, are you just trying to make extra money? Because you're an idiot. Because the first thing you see when you walk in, now there was chip paint. Did he call that out? Oh, no, he called out a rusted flash.
I don't sound a rebuttal.
See on the rebuttal.
Oh.
Yeah, so I would say get someone to help you. Call the lender, have the lender call the management company. Or
Oh, they
the
tried
appraisal desk.
it was an interesting experience. The appraiser was like on a boat in the ocean, apparently couldn't be bothered, but I'm pretty sure he still charged the buyer a trip fee and the lender paid for it. I was like,
Cha-ching.
yeah.
Yeah, that.
Right, so-
Is it my turn yet?
Thanks before me. Let's go.
Well, I can do it in a minute. No, just a question in regard to helping the appraisal and possibly preventing a rebuttal, right? So my question is, if you know that you may have some issues with the appraisal based on the FHA loan or whatever, and the buyer doesn't have enough money, appraisal needs to come in, is it ethical or is it advisable to address all this before the appraisal goes out and writes a report? Because once he has a report, now you got to try to rebuttal his report.
It's uphill.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm being video recorded here.
Stop
It's
that.
like, I think it's an opinion.
No, in general,
Pretty scary.
you're concerned, and they have some concerns, you know, this and that, okay?
About the value.
Yeah, it's in a rural area. It's just to support the price, the sales price. That's all it is.
Right, I would say give them the info and you say, I know you can't discuss value, but here's what I have. If you have any problems, give me a call, look it over. If this doesn't work for you, let me know. I'll give you some more info. And I would just say, I don't want to have to do a rebuttal thing. I could rather just, work things through with you here, but never say value, never say get it high, never. Just
Get high, Steve.
And when I talk to agents, I try to put everyone's mind at ease. Like I'll talk and I'll be like, I looked at it and it'd probably be a good idea if you sent me some sales or listings that you used to come up with your list price. Like there's like kind of code. It's like we're not talking about value, but I'm telling you, hey, where did you come up with?
Help me help you.
And then you'll say you send 3, then I'll respond and be like, yeah, do you have anything else? Like,
Well, 2 things on that. Appraisal will never call you, and let you know before I complete my report, would you give me some supportive information? And then once the report is done, like you said, it's an uphill battle.
So
Get Richie out there.
I would tell them ahead of time, here's some info. Can you please just let me know if you have any issues? Say I've gone through the rebuttal process. It's cumbersome. I'd rather, if you see any issues, can you just call me or maybe let me send you some more information?
I always take an upgrade list, which is just 1 page, just to be clear. There's
Yeah.
no pictures, it's a lit. I don't care what it is. If it's not original, it's on my list.
Yeah.
Right? If it's a patio, if it's landscaping, the upgrade of the sprinkler, a light fixture, I don't care. It is all on that list, especially with the older ones. I'm like, shh. And then I take a 1-page CMA, like 1 line of my comps.
Mhm.
And I'll normally have a couple pending there, or whatever it may be. So far, every time I do that, I don't have an issue. It's very rare that I have an appraisal issue. And if that one that I had talked about last week that I got with John Starks, he's now in a different state. I was like, baby, I got you. I will meet that appraiser. I will make the top. I will make the upgrade list. I'll do it all. Didn't have a single issue with that one, and it probably should have.
So we can do it, but be cool about it, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, just don't say the word value. Don't try to influence them. I just have a conversation. Just keep try to just have a regular conversation without talking.
I feel like most of them are pretty cool, and I feel like most appraisers, when you do the extra effort to actually meet them and give them information, I find that most of them are very thankful. I only have like 2 blackballed European appraisers in my phone that I'm like, you will never touch any deal I do again.
For the,
in 20 years. I'm not saying.
Ryan,
But it's
Ryan,
20 is my thing. Or they're appreciative and they work, I feel like they are.
I'm right there with you on that.
So-
Every time I meet up.
Because you and I, well,
You're saying, I make your life easier. Yeah, so then I do the homework. I haven't had an appraisal issue in like 2 years.
and I don't take full CMAs. It's literally I take 2 papers with
just
me.
tell,
One
I
paper-
never said you guys, I just said.
It's what I can't believe somebody does that.
Whole-
Wait,
Whole binder.
that's
stick
it.
them.
No way.
Wow. Richie, how do we find the standards? You mentioned them a couple of times. What do we search? Where do we find those appraisal guideline standards?
I would say they're very difficult to find. I would say just send my presentation.
Okay,
It's the HUD handbook, 4000.1 HUD handbook, but it constantly is being updated, and the pages I gave are for the April effective date. But they're constantly updating it, it changes. Same with Fannie Mae selling guide. They
Okay.
So Fannie Mae selling guide, FHA handbook. But those are 700 and 1200 page documents. So to find any of that information,
Oh,
yeah, I'd say just take this. You might want to just take those slides with those specific things.
okay. And then how do people reach out to you?
I have a business card, or my phone number is 916-960-6480. You can Google my name, just type in Richie Johnston in Google, I should show up. Hopefully it's #1. And I have a website that can be linked there. So I do, here's my 30-second sales pitch. I do divorce appraisals, do estate appraisals, IRS appraisals, litigation, or pre-listing appraisals. If it's a pre-listing for you guys, it's very cheap, maybe $100, 200, maybe 200. Like just as a service, if you have a sticky seller that's like, it's worth this, like, why don't we get an unbiased third-party opinion and I'll pay for it and I'll give you a pre-listing appraisal for cheap, just to, be friends.
That's good. That's good to know.
do you do on like,
And house measuring.
trustee sales or whatever, if they have to get, the. What do you call that, the tax dated,
Yeah.
some of the trustees.
Date of death.
Okay, they
Yes.
died they died in 2000, but we're just now selling it because it may be a life estate, and they have to go back and get an appraisal value.
Yeah, it's a retrospective
That-
date of death appraisal.
that-
Yes,
Do you do those as well?
yes.
Awesome.
Anything that has appraisal.
Take one, pass it around, guys.
Oh, and last thing, if you guys have any lenders that you work closely with that you send a lot of business to, let me know, or just pass on my name and say, hey, is this guy on your list? Because it's like, how do you, and I have 4 guys that work with me, and we're all very reasonable minded people. And if you get me on your lender list, see me more, and yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Was this good, guys? Remember
Oh,
Bye online. See you next Thursday at PCAR.
oh, yeah, sorry.